Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome everyone into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Welcome, welcome, welcome everyone. I hope that you're having a fantastic day and you are ready for the program. So today on the show we have the one, the only Mr. Nathan Evans, managing editor over at Popzara.com. And yeah, he of course joins us every last Friday of the month to talk about, a little bit of everything. I think it's a very fun way to kind of lead into the weekend and, recap this and that, just have a nice conversation. And ladies and gentlemen, hey, you will definitely want to check out more of him and his awesome team stuff over at Popzara.com. So with that being said, ComputerAmerica.com, everything we do at Computer America, you can find there and find it there first. It will have show notes, articles, links to anything that we talk about here today. If you want to find out more and be like, no way, why is Ben saying that stuff? Well, usually there's not really a reason, but if there is a reason, you can find it in the show notes. So ladies and gentlemen, ComputerAmerica.com, as well as links to social media and of course wherever podcasts are heard. Now, with that being said, let's go ahead, bring Nathan in and, just talk about a number of stories that, are pretty big. And honestly, the first one with, spoiler alert, E3 being canceled, didn't see coming, but at the same time, I think everyone kind of did in the back of their minds. Like, I feel like if they wanted to put on a show, they could have, but it would have been very, very lackluster with everyone pulling out. So, ladies and gentlemen, all that aside, we'll talk about that here in a moment. Nathan Evans. Nathan, welcome back onto the program. How you doing?
Hey, Ben, how's it going? You basically described me as that old expression, Friday news dump. So I am Computer America's Friday news dump. We
bring you on so we don't catch the flack because everyone forgets about all the anger by Monday. Absolutely.
Exactly. No, but thank you for leading off with the E3 thing. No offense. A blind man from Mars could have seen this coming. Do you ever watch the first Austin Powers movie?
Of course.
You remember that famous scene when the slow truck is rolling at him really slowly and he's like,
the steamroller, and guys just screaming, and of course he has minutes to get out of the way. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's E3 being canceled. Everybody could have seen it, and I actually don't take a lot of joy in this, but I've been a very big antagonist of E3 for years, like famously so. I've battled, the ESA for years and years about their, what I used to call their anti-journalistic proclivities.
Well, for everyone out there, I mean, E3 was, kind of like CES, but for video games, where it was tech insiders, it was journalists, it was a way to get out there, and they tried to evolve into a consumer-focused fanfare kind of BlizzCon thing.
Well, see, evolve means change over time to be beneficial to the organism, right? Mm-hmm. What E3 did, E3 sold itself. It sold its soul. It saw upstarts like whatever Jeff Keighley's doing, Jeff Keighley's, the journalist Jeff Keighley from whatever he does, the video game award shows. It saw PAX, it saw upstarts, and it said, you know what? How can we lose respectability while gaining nothing in the process? And that began to emerge as the preference for journalists gave way to influencers, and then eventually it gave way to streamers, and eventually it gave way to ticket sellers.
Yeah.
E3. And I can tell you, as someone who's been to E3 several times, who's covered the show for almost 25 years, I can tell you that nobody really wants to be there when they're there because it means stopping development, it means spending a lot of money on marketing costs. But it's basically a scrum. I mean, for audience members who don't know what that word means, it's basically you get a bunch of journalists in the same room and they focus on what's important. So, for example, you have Call of Duty, but you also may have a game called Busy Scissors. You're going to have the big companies like Nintendo, Microsoft, Sony, whatever, but you're going to have the small companies. And for the small companies, this is the only opportunity they'll ever have to get press. Now, this predates the internet. This predates streaming, of course, and everything changed. I think the moment that E3 was dead, even though the corpse still was animated, was when Nintendo pulled out years ago, and they did their Treehouse shows, which basically said, "Hey, it's the internet. Let's use it. We don't need E3." Now, don't get me wrong. There's something special about E3, but I think a lot of that has to do with nostalgia, because there was no Oscars. There was no Grammys. There was no Tonys. Who the hell is the Tonys? There was nothing. E3 was basically the video game Christmas show. It was where you get to see the future. You get to see the future. You get a big show. You get wined and dined, and you get treated respectable. And it was on the news, and you get to know what's coming out, and you get to see things. But when Steve Jobs started doing his Apple walk-ons, and then again when Nintendo did their other thing, it basically said, well, I don't know if this show is necessary, but the show did itself in. It became caustic, it became hateful, it became negative, it became unpleasant, really. Right. And in the face of so many other things, like for example, this week we had Nintendo show off 10 minutes of the new Zelda game. What is it, Tears of the Kingdom? They just showed 10 minutes of the game. They didn't need E3 for it. They didn't know anything else for it. The game is going to sell, 20 million copies, whatever. They don't need E3 to show that anymore. And I think really that's it. Like that's really what did it in. I wish they had evolved. They could have evolved a tail, but no, they ran away with their tail between their legs, and they did themselves in. Like I said, it's now that okay, there's really two parts to this story, Ben, and I'll be quiet. Yes, the 2023 show is canceled. They've had aborted versions since 2019, but I think the writing's on the wall that E3 is done. Like if there's ever an E3 show again, I will be genuinely shocked. Like there is nobody wants it. I mean, the brand has no value.
Well, let's get a quote here from ESA's president saying that, quote, "We're committed to providing an industry platform for marketing and convening, but we want to make sure we find that right balance that meets the needs of the industry. E3 will iterate to ensure it's meeting the needs of companies that want to market on this global platform. That means it will iterate on how people engage with E3. We want to meet the needs of the people who view this as an important platform, and that's going to evolve over time," which, he's saying that if there's a way we can bring it back, we will, but clearly that's saying it's not going to come back in its current form.
Well, I mentioned Jeff Keighley a minute ago. He has a summer show in what's it called? Summer Game Fest.
Summer Game Fest.
Basically, that's an evolved version of it. And I think you have a screenshot of him with Duke Nukem right there. He also handles the Game Award show, which has become, I hate to say this, the most respectable Game Award show by default. But that's how you evolve something. You bring respectability into it, but you also, and you're going to hate this. People are going to hate when I say this. There needs to be a little discrimination. You can't mix Twitter polls, and you can't mix influencers with journalists, because they're not the same thing. An influencer is not a journalist. An influencer is basically a paid sponsorship. Like when you see someone when you see a video game influencer, that's someone who is paid to promote something. That's not a journalist. Right. They're not going to be accurate. And I know that sounds horrible, but I love their personality. It's like watching a dentist commercial where the dentist is paid to promote Colgate. It's not the same.
It's well known, and that's why Steam has on their reviews saying this person received this product for free or as a promotion. And obviously Computer America and Popzara, we both review a lot of products. We try our best
too, by the way.
We try our best, but we even have to include disclaimers, because your sense of objectiveness does get skewed a little bit when you get something for free. But like we have to as journalists, because we can't go out and buy every single product. But yeah,
let me stop you right there though. You use the word free. It's not free. See, if they're giving you something, if they're giving you an access code or a review product or whatever, it's not a transaction. They're not saying like, I give you this, now you give me review. They're not saying that. What they're saying is, I'm going to give you this product sample for evaluation.
True.
And that means that that means that because your credibility and your resources and your reputation says, we trust you. Here's a Lenovo laptop. Here's Resident Evil 4 on whatever. Here's an Xbox. Here's whatever. And now we would like if they don't care. Now, here's a little secret. They don't care if you give it positive or negative. They don't care. It is irrelevant to them. They don't care. Reviews have no impact. But content on the internet has impact. It influences SEO. It influences this. It influences that. And again, let's say I review Ben Crossman Goes to Barbie Land. Okay, and it's like, oh, this game is terrible. It's
how do you know about my midnight project?
Yeah, but I mean, like, all the things that sound negative could be positive. Like reviews have very little impact. What a review should do, what a criticism should do, it should give you the outline of what a product is. It should give you an honest evaluation of what a product does, and it should owe to the bias of the critic. Like, we're all biased in some way, but we own it. And what one person would call bias, Ben, another person would call experience. Like, I would not be able to review a Madden game for you, a John Madden game. I couldn't do it. I don't play them. Right. But, so I'm not going to. But if someone can, then that experience would be misinterpreted as bias. But all I know is that as critics, as reviewers, we are obligated to tell the truth. The truth is hard. It's not like, oh, I hate this. This is terrible. It's, well, why?
You do have to read your own writing multiple times and be like, is this something that I experienced during the game and those are my experiences, or is this something that I inferred because I did not like this because I don't like this type of game? And
that's exactly true. That's exactly true. And I will end it with this. And I think sometimes, when I say, I don't want to say all influencers are bad by the sheer nature of them being influencers. They could have good points. I'm not saying that, but I am saying that you have to say, there needs to be some discrimination, so the opinions of certain people who do take it more seriously can be elevated. And I think we all kind of want that. Like, the Oscars were last month. Like, I don't really care about the Oscars, but there's some value in a show like the Oscars presenting small independent films. There's some value in the presentation of the product. And I think E3 missed the opportunity. I think they completely missed the opportunity and they went the other direction.
Yeah.
And,
they definitely weren't. And I got to say that the individual brands, they have built some, Microsoft has their kind of showcase where they show all the different indie companies that they've recently acquired. PlayStation shows all the, all the headlining games that you can only play on PlayStation, and they do a pretty good job. Nintendo, of course, has a really good spotlight every, I think like twice a year or something like that. All these companies were able to build something that, like, obviously they're going to be giga biased because it's their own. It's essentially advertising. But I will say they are, they're kind of meat and potatoes. They're the games that you want to see and nothing else. And E3 had a lot of like you said, sell out, but like a lot of advertising. That it wasn't just show me the games. It was, here's a bunch of stuff surrounding that I had to get through to get to the games.
I remember one of the worst experience I've ever had was in 2010, and every year every show they would have this collective of journalists where they would vote on the best game of the show and all this. And I think the game that was voted in 2010 was the game Rage. And if you had seen the game at the show, which by the way you couldn't,
it's right there
because it was the game was a mess. It was clearly a mess. It was not good, and it got game of the show. And its own bylaws that a game had to be playable at the show. It wasn't playable. It became obvious. Like, you go in there the first day, and games have stickers that say "Best of Show" nominee, whatever.
Right.
Only the game industry would be so brazen to award itself backwards. Instead of saying this game was game of the year because it got critics' reviews. No. They would put stickers on games. They still do sometimes. This game was best of show. This unfinished beta game that wasn't even finished won game of the show. And no one played it. It was more of a symbol of marketing and money than it was quality. And like I said, they kept doubling down, and it became. I mean, I'm going to be honest with you. You burn the candle at both ends, and eventually you burn yourself out. And that's what E3 did. And they refused to listen to criticism. And it was a headache. Every year, it was like pulling teeth out through my butt, trying to navigate this mess. I mean, all my editors know my hatred for E3. I've written about it. it was a slow death. It was an unnecessarily slow death of a show that used to be fun, that used to be informative, but
I think when they started to sell participants. Yeah, I think when they started to sell general admission tickets for $1,000 a pop, they could have just closed up shop there. That was.
Can I tell you something?
Yeah.
Last comment. I won't say the year I was there. I don't want to embarrass anybody who's there, but I remember being there a couple of years back with one of the years they started selling tickets. Mm-hmm. And you could see the journalists there. The journalists had to get a plane. They had to do meetings. They had to schedule things. They had to schedule interviews. They were doing work. These are people who get paid to do this. And all of a sudden, they're competing with people wearing animal costumes and doing scavenger hunts and jumping in front of line and screaming and giggling. It was horrible for them. It was so disrespectful for the actual people who were trying to do work. It was not a carnival. Like, people literally couldn't do their jobs because these idiots were jumping around. I'm sorry, but that's not what the show was.
Yeah, well, it's not what the show is either, because the show is no more. So there you go.
I'm not going to dance on its grave, but I will do a little bit of a jig. So
well, and I think with E3's death, you have probably 5 or 6 other events that they don't overlap all at once, but they're still within the same time period. Microsoft and PlayStation, and they still release theirs in about the same time. So it's not like we're missing anything really.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Let me have one final metaphor.
Sure,
so
go for it.
I actually just got rid of my last Blu-ray player in my house. I just realized I got rid of an old Xbox, and I realized, oh crap, I don't have any optical media in my house. I have like 4 Blu-ray movies, right, that I got from years ago. But I was like, I don't have a Blu-ray player in my PC. None of my game consoles have Blu-ray players because I don't have it here. But I don't have it. And I thought to myself, oh, wait a minute, I don't use Blu-rays. My first instinct to miss it was nostalgia.
Yeah.
But not reality. Was not reality. Same with the CDs. Same with a lot of old stuff. It's like my heartstrings are sad that it's gone, but my reality is I haven't used it in a long time. So I'm not really going to be sad for something that I don't really miss.
Yeah, there you go. That's a great way to wrap it up for E3. So, and again, if it does come back, it's going to be in something different. I doubt it's going to be a massive convention. It might be, a digital a digital show, strictly like a YouTube live stream or something like that.
I think that would be appropriate. I think that would be a better use of their money.
Yeah, so we'll see what that eventually evolves into. But this year, no such luck. Okay, so there's that one. Let's go ahead and jump over to another story that we didn't cover on the show because I was busy all week, and I apologize for that. But this one, I heard it on just the general news that Apple is jumping into the who made this popular? The ability to pay.
It was PayPal.
PayPal, and there was one other that you could do it to, that you could buy something up to, let's say, $1,000, usually about $100, whatever, and you could pay it off in installments, and there's no interest unless you miss one of those payments. Let's say it's like, and oh my God, I even saw this on buy dinner and pay it off in 4 equal installments, and I'm like, man, that's really predatory.
It is.
So Apple is introducing the ability to pay things off over time and split it into 4 equal payments with 0 interest and 0 fees, which, doesn't sound bad, but let's be honest. It's kind of like payday loans and credit cards. They're all well and good if you keep to the terms, but man, life gets in the way, and then the predatory stuff kicks in. So why did you include this, Nathan? And what do you think about Apple Pay Later? And again, the service is Apple Pay Later.
Apple Pay Later. Enjoy life today. Get yourself in debt later. I did it because you remember years and years ago where the world has changed so much that when Apple would bring out a product that other people have already done, it started with the iPod, let's be honest. Apple people would always over analyze that Apple was the creator. Apple did this. It didn't matter till Apple did it. Apple. But Apple hasn't done anything revolutionary in a long time. They haven't innovated anything in a long time. And to kind of see them do this is interesting. I think it's good that they're doing this. Now, I'll explain why. I'm not saying I don't think they're predatory. But this is a service that I know PayPal has it and paying for. I think Venmo has it. Like most products have this deferred payment. Microsoft has it.
Definitely a continuing of the trend. Yes.
Yes. And what it does, it's a cheapening of the bank statements, though, because I think the problem is in government, you're starting to get more regulations on credit card late payments. I think the Biden administration is going to be putting forth legislation to try to minimize like the number of times you can be dinged for late credit card payments, the same way they did with overdraft. So, I mean, banks, and that's what Apple basically is. They're a bank now. I don't know if
ever since the Apple Card,
funded.
Yeah.
Now, full disclosure, I have the Apple Card.
Mm-hmm.
I have it. I find it pretty cool to use. It's not my go-to credit cards. I don't use credit cards a lot, but I use it when I travel a lot because I don't like whipping out credit cards at the airport.
Right.
But I will say this though, like the way Apple structures their credit card is the best I've ever seen. Like you name any of the Chase, American Express, whatever. The Apple credit card is basically a dial wheel. I don't know if you have it. You can dial, like you literally swipe your finger on a dial. It will show you exactly how much interest you have to pay.
Right.
It's pretty cool. I like it. It's like, wow, this is so transparent, right? Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean you owe any less money. It's just transparent. And I suppose this is probably going to be closer to that as well. But no, it's just another reminder that Americans, specifically Americans, live without their means. You know, they don't stay within budgets. And why pay for something if you could put it off and just whatever, pay for it later. Just enjoy it now. Just enjoy it now. And and
it's not a good trend, but it's not Apple the one who is contributing to this. It's probably more the state of the current economy, and it's a bigger critique on society. And like Apple sees the demand for this, so they're going to provide it. But it's not Apple's fault, No,
it's not Apple's fault. And like I said, I will say this, and I'm not an economist, so I can't tell you what the scheme is here, right? Other than let me get your money.
I think somewhere I have a disclaimer saying that nothing that we say here is financial advice and should not be taken as such and blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
But I don't understand the economics to understand how this is profitable for Apple other than that they guarantee a payment. Like how do you enforce non-payment? How do you enforce if a product needs to be repossessed? Like, for example, you mentioned something really smart, and I'm really glad you did. People who rent furniture,
mm-hmm.
People from Aaron's or Rent-A-Center. I have an acquaintance who bought a refrigerator last year, and she said to me, "Oh, the refrigerator! It was a $3,000 fridge. We got it for $1,500." And I looked at the fridge, and it was about 7 years old, full of scratches. You could go to Best Buy right now and buy a better fridge for like maybe $900. But what you do is you take something, it's like car dealerships, like the no credit, no problem car dealerships. You take something and you say, you have no credit, you have bad credit, whatever. We're going to take this crappy car, crappy fridge, and we're going to charge you $1,500, but we're going to break it up in payments, only $300 a month.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? And the idea is that person's going to pay like maybe 2 payments before they lapse, and you got to take the fridge back, got to take the car back, and just repeat the process.
Yeah.
Don't rent furniture.
Yeah, well, don't rent furniture. Don't rent, dinner for the night. Don't rent a lot of things. Like I understand if there's something that you really want or need. Let's say you're going to school, you're a student, and you need a laptop right now for school, and you could, and that you could pay it off. This is all well and good. Financial intelligence is something that I guess is kind of earned, which hence your credit score. As you learn to balance your budget, as you learn to pay things off on time, and keep everything going, your credit score goes up. This skips that whole process. And
yeah,
don't get me wrong, Nathan, I think that credit scores kind of suck. People who are responsible, but they don't have the history, they're kind of screwed. But this skips that process to kind of warn people that, hey, you still have to pay for this thing. It's just over time.
Look, I'm not advocating credit scores. I understand they're predatory as well. But the problem is that we live in a debt society. We live in a debt society where the vast majority of people in this country anyway are in debt. Mm-hmm. And I'm not trying to say people shouldn't have nice things. I'm not trying to say you shouldn't have a couch. You shouldn't have a laptop. I'm not saying that. But I guarantee you, if you're listening to this and if you're getting upset what I'm saying, I guarantee you either you or someone is crippled in debt. And I think, it's become political that people get into situations that they were said were predatory. Oh, I didn't mean to get student loans. I didn't mean to get this. I didn't mean to get this. Well, the problem is it's presented as easy. It's presented as easy. You could get everything now. Why wait? And it's a very difficult, if not impossible, argument for someone like me to say, you shouldn't have that laptop. You shouldn't go to college. You shouldn't do that. So I'm not going to. But the fact of the matter is that, some people are rich for a reason. Some people are poor for a reason. And people who can't learn to manage their finances, Apple's not here to help you. Goldman Sachs isn't here to help you. They're here to. I
like that point, is that these companies, Apple doesn't think that this is really going to help you. It's a service that people are demanding. So there you go. But also Apple can and will make money off of this. And, this may help people. This may help you make that crucial purchase, and it may be good. Or you may make $1,000 worth of purchases and suddenly find out that, Apple's not really going to deal with you anymore, and you're going to owe them a lot of money, well over $1,000 at the end of the day.
Well, I'll just make one more comment. I mean, I don't want to come across as snooty about this, but when the government was talking about restricting credit card late fees, one of the comments they had was, late fees, such and such. I don't have the exact figures on me, but they made a comment. Spokesperson made a comment. Oh, this will save Americans like $60 million. And I thought to myself, well, if you're in credit card debt and you're paying late fees, then you're not going to save anything. It's your spending that's costing it. Nothing we do addresses the elephant in the room, which is the overspending of money we don't have. That's a problem. And I've never heard anybody talk about it. When we hear about student loans, when you hear about students being crippled with student loans, I agree. These people are in debt and they got schnookered into something they shouldn't have got. But, for example, you never hear, well, if the loans are so predatory and they're ruining people's lives, then why do you still give them? You just want to pay off somebody's loans. But why do you allow them to continue if they're that bad?
And obviously everyone's finances are individual. They're very, we probably can't solve nothing we say is financial advice or should be followed to the letter. Exactly. But everyone's very individual. And all I'm saying is that if you hear this and you say, wow, I can buy so many more things now that Apple has done this. No, that this is probably not a solution to anyone's woes. So
let me say this. Here is some financial advice. Live within your means as much as possible. And if there's something on the market you really, really want, try to find a used copy of it. Try to find a used version of it and make do until you can afford it. Be responsible. Just be responsible. You might be surprised. You might be surprised at how much you enjoy saving money. That's all I'm saying.
I don't think there's anyone out there who has any financial sense that would say, did Nathan just say live within your means? What a jerk.
Do your best. No, do your best. Do your best to live within your means. Make a budget. We mentioned influencers a moment ago. There are so many influencers that are talking about this envelope scheme. I don't know if you've seen it, where you put cash in envelopes. And, it's interesting. It's an interesting development. Like I said, it can be fun saving money. You got to gamify it. Just be careful.
Yes, gamify everything for sure. Yeah. So there's that story. Story number 2. Story number 3. Let's go ahead and jump on over to speaking of living within your means. This company should have all the means, because only do they have a successful game that many call, many would say it's one of the best games ever made. As far as story goes and that kind of thing, The Last of Us has been a very successful video game, and it almost has a Skyrim-esque to it. It gets re-released every single year. Blah, blah, blah. Well, now that the TV show is doing very, very well, last I checked, they released a PC port of The Last of Us. Now, here's the problem. Nathan, doesn't seem to be going too well, because I actually remember seeing a picture of someone whose skin texture, video games are made in a certain way, but yeah, the model skin texture was completely black and it wasn't it was not rendered well. And kind of scanning through this article that you sent from Ars Technica, seems like a lot of people are having PC performance issues, and it's not uncommon. So
it's a sad state of affair where you had the assumption that your $5,000 gaming PC is going to play everything great. It's going to do everything wonderful. Everything's going to be fantastic, and it's going to be better than a console. And that's just not true. It's never been true. And it's happening with more frequency as we see a lot of cross-platform development between consoles and PCs, but specifically for games that were originally designed to be on finite hardware that become PC adjacent. And Sony, to their credit, it's interesting. This is a much bigger story than I think what you and I are going to give it credit for. But The Last of Us should have been a slam dunk. Like you said, the franchise by Naughty Dog is beloved. Whatever you think of that title being best game of all time, whatever, I don't agree, but I agree that it's a very, very good game.
Right.
And the franchise expanded with a very successful TV show that is, again, that itself is part of a larger conversation about the legitimacy of video game adaptations. I think next week we're going to have the real test. We're going to have the Super Mario movie, and we're going to see how that does. Like, we literally, like, as comic book movies begin to ebb and flow, like, clearly there's the interest for comic book movies is decaying. The interest in video game stuff is exploding, right? And we can talk about that forever. But The Last of Us should have been a slam dunk for Sony. Supply side constraints restricted PlayStation 5 sales, and Sony doesn't make money on hardware; they make money on software.
Right.
And if nobody's buying a game, they're not making any money. And that's the problem. So the PC became an outlet for them. You have PlayStation publishing games on PC, and for the most part, they've done pretty well. You've had games like Horizon Zero Dawn. You've had, of course, God of War. You've had Days Gone. You've had a lot of good stuff on the PC. It's become very good for Sony. The fact that this wasn't is interesting about why it hasn't. It also reminds me that I think the developer that did it was, if I'm wrong here, you can fix it, but I think the developer was called Iron Galaxy. They're the ones who ported the game over to the PC from Sony.
Yeah, that does tend to happen where a lot of ports are handled by third parties that, but yeah, Iron Galaxy Studios.
Was it? I don't know. I don't know if they're the ones who also ported Metroid Prime from the GameCube to the Switch.
And I'm seeing a lot of articles also talking about a place called Nixes, Nixxes, also seems to have worked on the port as well.
Yeah, there's, like I said, they basically purchase the work for porting. And I know Sony purchased this company. Was it this year? What company was it?
Sony purchased.
Yeah, Nixes, that's it.
Yeah.
Which I don't know how much they had involved in this one, but it reminds me, was it last year when you had the Grand Theft Auto trilogy port? And Rockstar is one of the better developers out there. Rockstar has a solid reputation that I think is rivaled only by like Nintendo or what Blizzard used to be.
Right.
And it turns out they farmed it out to a third-party company, and it was based on iOS code, and the game was a disaster. And I don't understand how companies would be so callous and so careless with their brands. Like, the fact that Sony saw fit to release this, of course we know why. This game was released to take advantage of the momentum of the television show. That's why it came out. And it was itself a remake of a remaster. So the original Last of Us was a PlayStation 3 game.
So it should be super good, right?
Yeah, that usually happens, right? But no, it makes you wonder. It does make you wonder, though, about how much they do care about the actual product and how much of it is just IP to them, And to their credit, Naughty Dog has acknowledged it. But we can get into the technical side. But what's really interesting is that the game clearly was broken. Clearly, this is a good time to play what I call Nate's game of shills. Go and look at all the positive reviews for this game. There's a couple tens where it's it's so great,
I'm looking at the negative reviews, and the number one negative review is The Crash of Us. That's the entire
You're looking on Steam, right?
Yes.
So Steam has a return policy based on hours. So if you played a game less than 2 hours, you can return it. Unless the problem is with this game is that it can take up to 2 hours for the shaders to load up. And I think that was the contention, is that it was so poorly optimized. But I'll be honest with you, we've seen a lot of bad, shoddy PC ports lately. We saw the Hogwarts Legacy, which was atrocious on the PC. We've seen Chrono Cross, which is atrocious on the PC. You've seen stuff. a more interesting conversation you and I could be having right now, which we can't because there's no time, would be to remind everybody that the PC is not a console. The PC is a Frankenstein. Your console, your PlayStation, your Switch, your Xbox is a finite piece of hardware that was streamlined, that was created in a laboratory to work a very certain way. And developers are given these finite hardwares. They say, here, develop a game. And over years, you become familiar with this finite piece of hardware, and you could really tailor it, and you could make it sing. You could make, like, Doom Eternal runs on the Switch. Go figure, right? But the fact of the matter is that the PC is a Frankenstein, which means there's thousands of video cards, thousands of RAM,
consoles,
thousands of hard drives.
Consoles may have like a dozen different configurations, whereas PCs have, millions and millions of configurations.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's to be expected a little bit of, give it a little time in the oven to fix. Okay, let's be honest here. Let's do that. Your $4,000 video card is not going to fix bad optimization. It's not going to fix it.
I guess the issue is when you have picture or tweets like this that, obviously the company is going to hype up its own game saying, look how good it is. And, they have this one where they kind of show off the shaders and it looks, it looks like a gorgeous game. But of course, then you get into the game and it's not running well. And it's a disconnect of shipping. Nathan, how many times have we had the conversation of how dare video game companies ship an incomplete game? That's what's happening.
Well, I mean, we've given way to like beta tests. Like you had the Diablo 4 beta, which again ran like garbage on a lot of PCs. But then you had like Blizzard as a company. Blizzard used to be a company that had a better quality control because a lot of people.
The game looked good, but I believe it was killing some 4080s and some 4090s.
Yeah, and our editor who played the beta himself had a horrible experience with optimization. But again, Blizzard was a company that started off making console games that eventually merged to PC. So their attitude was, we can't update, we can't do this, it has to ship perfect. And you have that. I mean, the gold standard, of course, is Nintendo. And if Nintendo released Tears of the Kingdom or Tears of whatever the new Zelda is in this state, they would lose billions of dollars, but they're not going to do it. Development matters. If you told me that Sony released this game, like Sony programmed this game or Naughty Dog released it, I wouldn't believe you.
Right.
Like, Naughty Dog has never released a product this shoddy. It had to be like the game of telephone for development.
It does seem to be that they were on a very strict timeline. Blizzard historically can say it's coming out soon, TM, or other companies can say, oh, we need to delay it by a month or two. They could not delay. The TV show is out. The hype is only going to go down from here, and they had to release it. So yeah, they had to release it unfinished.
No, because they don't take to heart Shigeru Miyamoto. The most beloved game developer of all time had a very famous quote about this. You've heard this quote. A delayed game is eventually good. A bad game is bad forever.
Yes.
And what I'm saying is, and I will take the advice of the man behind Mario and Donkey Kong versus some third-party abstract company that gets paid to take someone else's product and make it playable on a PC. Like, at some point, there has to be some consumer protections for this, where they release a game that is clearly broken. Clearly, it's broken. It doesn't work. And so you can fix it, right? But shame on the companies for realizing that video game fans are very forgiving and very, maybe antisocial to the point where they're not going to sit up and fight. But, I hate to say it, if you really want to play Last of Us Part 1, go get a PlayStation 5. There's nothing stop. Well, you can get it now. They're a lot easier to get.
Yeah, they're available
pretty well. They're out there now. Things the size of a car, but it's probably good. It's going to run the game better than your PC right now. But you know what? Give it time. I'm sure the PC version will get fixed up.
I've heard some people wait, and I guess this is kind of like the weird part of it. Some people wait for like the Game of the Year edition or the whatever maybe. This game though has already had Game of the Year editions and remasters and that kind of thing. So I don't know. It will eventually even out. These are technical issues. The game has already proven that it's a game worth playing, but technically not right now.
And I'll say this. One of the best examples of this of all time, of course, we saw Cyberpunk 2077, whatever. The game was released in abhorrent state. It took 2 years to fix, and now the game is considered great. It's making money hand over fist for CD Projekt Red.
Yeah.
You have another game. Capcom released Street Fighter V back in 2016. They released it in such an unfinished state, it was embarrassing. It took years for them to fix it up. Now, should we wait 6 years for them to get their act together? Sometimes you have to. Like, that's just the trade-off of these fast downloads and these hard drives. Like, that's the trade-off. And maybe, I mean, when was the last Zelda game? 2017, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so for in between 2017 and 2023, there have been 6 Call of Duty games. In between that time, there have been no Zelda games. So you got to wait 6-7 years for a Zelda game. But when you get it, it's probably going to be pretty good. Right. So sometimes it takes longer to bake the cake.
Sometimes it takes longer, but I saw a graphic the other day, and then we're going to move on. But it was about, of course, Elder Scrolls. And I think Skyrim came out in 2008 or something like that, or 2011. It's that one's taken a while, so hopefully that one's good. That's a complete aside, and I hope Elder Scrolls finally releases, but still no release date yet, so we'll see. Yeah, so all that aside, let's go ahead and skip on over to our next story, and this one is about Audible. And, Audible, they do a lot of advertising. So you've probably heard some of their plugs. And
full disclosure, I am a paying member of Audible. I am a big fan of Audible. So
there you go. And you're not alone. Audible is by far the most popular, audio book service. They've earned a reputation for having good quality. Their readers are very good. A lot of time the readers are the authors themselves, which is always nice. Mm-hmm. They have a great selection and a great library. Now, here comes the part where, every service has to be the most profitable. It's not just about being profitable, but the most profitable. Audible is testing ad-supported access for non-members. And that's a little bit different because, you had to sign up to Audible. They had 30-day free trials left, right, and center. But, to be a paying member, you got access to everything. And Nathan, you can look at Disney Plus, you can look at Netflix, you can look at every other streaming service. I know they're not the same thing, but ad support seems to be the way to go for companies and it may have to do with the idea of subscription burnout. People are tired of subscribing to 20 different services every single month, but hey, ads, you still earn money and people still get the service. So yeah, what do you think?
Well, here's the thing. I don't really understand what's happening here, to be honest with you, because the only way to get a book on Audible is to buy the book outright or subscribe. And now for people who don't know, if you subscribe to Audible, it's not Netflix. You don't get all the books. What you do is, depending on the service you get one book, you get one token a month, and you can spend it on anything, any book you want. Like, to their credit, Audible doesn't tier anything up. You can get a 60-hour Sherlock Holmes collection, or you can get the brand new Kim Kardashian book. It doesn't matter. Your token will get you whatever you want. It's pretty cool. It's the golden ticket into the candy factory. But you also get they have expanded by, you can get podcasts, you can get a lot of other stuff. There is freebies. They've made the service more desirable for people who read a lot, and I read a lot. I like Audible. I wish it was cheaper, but honestly, I've spent more on books than $15 a month. I promise you. Mm-hmm. But the idea is you can buy the book outright. So who is this really affecting? Are they saying if I bought a book for $15, that I'm going to have ads in the book that I bought? Like, that's what it seems to be suggesting, and I can't think of anything as offensive as that.
Yeah, the second link that you send seems to answer some of that, where they're for non-members will have ad-supported access. So it seems like, and if you listen to, on the car ride from where we're going to where we are, I listen to, and, I mentioned this in a previous podcast, but Behind the Bastards, very fun. But I got to say that they use an automated ad service through Spotify that automatically chops in ads. And, the people on the other end can kind of play with it a little bit, but at the same time, you can kind of tell that they're automatically placed with markers, and sometimes they put ads in the middle of a sentence. I think, Nathan, that's what's going to happen, is they're going to automatically insert ads if you're a non-member into books that you are listening to. Now, it doesn't say how often, but they said 8 ads can be heard within a 24-hour period. So it seems like, one every 3 hours. So,
well, I'll say this. If this leads to us getting like an ad-supported Audible service where you can get, you can listen to new books with ads, yeah, I'm fine with that. I think most people would be fine with that.
And they did say that it will be select titles. So I'm guessing that anyone who wants to opt in, so the authors themselves will say, sure, go ahead, list my book for the ad-supported tier on Audible, and then people can listen to it. And so that seems to be where they're kind of heading, I think, is the authors will opt in to let their books be heard for ad-supported. And then, of course, they will get a portion of the ad revenue. That's what I'm thinking.
I think that would be acceptable, but I also want to state that I'm looking it up right now on my phone. Let's see here. I have my Audible app. I have my Apple Books app. I would recommend, if anybody gets upset at this, go check out your local library. Your local library most likely has a digital book service.
Yes.
My favorite is Hoopla. There's there's another one called Libby that I'm not a huge fan of, and I think there's a few more. Mm-hmm. But there are so many options to listen to books now. There's so many options, and I think if they do this right, and I think they might, if they do this right, then I fear that it might be competing with libraries a little bit, because I think the libraries are the only ones that have quote unquote free services. But
yeah,
I don't know. I love the trend of audiobooks, and I think I'd rather take an ad-supported one where you actually have people reading versus what I heard that Apple's doing, that Apple's using AI to do text-to-speech in their audiobooks. Why anybody would be okay with it. I don't understand. That's horrible. That is a terrible idea.
Well, AI is to the point where it's passable, but it's not enjoyable. And it's much cheaper than a person. So, I mean, that seems to be AI's entire thing is it's passable, not perfect, but, it's free. So,
did I tell you this last time we chatted? Full disclosure, that's what Popzara does a little bit. We do text-to-speech. Mm-hmm. We're beta testing something right now. And
notice that at the top of your articles. Yeah.
Well, check this out, though. I want to show you something fun. So every article on Popzara that's not a podcast you can read, but that's not the magic. We've been testing something, and can't really talk about it too much because it's still in beta. But for example, do you have Spotify on your computer?
Of course.
Do me a favor, pull up Spotify. If you're listening, sure. I will narrate this for you. Ben is pulling up his Spotify app. Or do you have the app or do you have the web version?
Web version. Okay. Well, looks like I'm not signed in, but I mean, but it's Spotify.
Oh, that's okay. Search Popzara.
Mm-hmm. Popcan, perfect. Popzara featured.
There we are. There we go.
There you
go. Now click on it.
Yeah.
Now look. Did you see that article? It says article.
Yep.
That same article that's on the web automatically gets transferred, gets text to speech, and gets uploaded to our podcast. So if you actually want to listen to Popzara, you don't actually have to go to the site anymore. You can actually just open up Spotify or Amazon or iTunes, and you can listen to the articles without having to go to the site. It doesn't. It's all automated.
Quick little articles. 3 minutes, 5 minutes a piece. Very simple. Yeah.
Do me a favor. Are you able to play it at all? And you can see the metadata we put in there to distinguish it.
This article was originally published on popzara.com. Read this and more on our website. I love games that have a premise that's both really silly and also really unique. I think a good example of this is 2022's breakout hit Trombone Champ, a true...
There you go. Yeah, no, again, I think that, one of your editors could probably read it better, but it's definitely passable, definitely worth listening to.
But we're doing our best to sort of, silo a text-to-speech as opposed to like a podcast that actually gets produced. And I think both can live in harmony. It's just that it's adding value and audience to something without having to go through necessary work. Yeah, I would prefer if someone reads everything. Trust me, I absolutely would. But it's expensive. It's expensive and time-consuming. Things have gotten better, but it's like we're navigating this new world. We're navigating it. But the idea is that, the vision I had for Popzara was everything's a podcast. But I didn't want to just bring text. Everyone poo-poos like, oh, everyone does text-to-speech. Not really. Not really. A website can do it, but it's difficult to translate a lot of content into a different format. economically.
It's obviously what traditionally people are looking for is still there, but this is in addition to, and that's always something worth looking into, is when you, like you said, add value to something that, you know, traditionally is not going to change. So
my thing is this: if you have a good product, you have a good content, then you really want more people to see it or listen to it. Like, and anything that brings it to more eyeballs or earballs or whatever balls, then that's good. That's a bonus, and that's why I'm not against the idea of ad-supported Audible if they do it correctly. But can you imagine? Like, do you ever remember Crackle, when Crackle was a thing? And good luck trying to watch something on Crackle, because every 5 seconds, ad.
I think that's where people are afraid of, because, you know, in the past, like, I don't know what, well, I guess I do know what kind of advertising, you know, weapons they have. And the answer is giant sacks of money that they'll hit you over the head with. You know, especially for like the Holy Grail, like Netflix, where there has never been an ad, and now they're going to come out with an ad-supported tier. It's like advertisers are just like, they just see this pool of people that are not getting ads, and they just froth at the mouth. They're just like, we need those people, and like they will just pummel these companies with money until they figure out a way to get there. And, you know, let advertisers control how they get into the products. And guess what? They're going to ruin it, because they're going to want as many, like Computer America started out in, you know, traditional radio, and it was fun for a time. It was great. I got to say, when I came in, I think it was like near the apex. Like, obviously radio has gone downhill, and I completely blame myself for that. But coming in, we had a little bit behind the scenes. We had like a sheet. You know, we timed up our clocks behind the scenes, and it was like, you know, 0. It's like 0 to 5, top of the hour news. 5 to 13, it was our bumper and our intro, where we would bring in our guests, have a little conversation, do that kind of thing. 13 to 18 was ads. 18 to 23 was more talking. 23 to 30 were ads. Nathan, by the end of traditional radio that, you know, at least Computer America was on in our network, which I'm not going to name, they were playing more ads than content, and we couldn't do anything about it. And let advertisers control the narrative. That's what's going to happen. Hopefully, Amazon, being as big as they are, they can keep it at least to a part that maybe they will have more people access to more audiobooks in their services without compromising what's already there.
I'll say this. If you ever watch syndicated TV, like shows that have been syndicated, there was a big to-do about this years ago, where you had popular shows like Seinfeld or Friends, whatever, and people started noticing that the shows were sped up, like by like 1/10. And you see this, like, if you ever watch anything on syndication, when the credits roll, they immediately squish the credits and they start playing the new episode while the credits are playing. But they had people syncing up like syndicated shows, and they were running faster. So they would degrade the quality of the program to run more ads. Specifically, like shows like The Simpsons used to be like 25 minutes, right? But the number of ads have dictated that the show would be cut. Like, I think the average length of The Simpsons is like 21. Yeah, because it has to cut into there. And so you can live with it, but it's going to have an effect. It's going to have an effect on the quality of the content if you don't do it right. Right. And people forget, Ben, newspapers were designed to present ads. The content, I told you before, publishers don't give a crap what your review is. They don't care if you loved it or hated it. They're there to sell ad space. That's why newspapers, you know, those paper things, they don't refer to your thing as words. They refer to it as copy. They would say 4-inch columns, because you're basically a pagination. You're there to fill in space. You are there to fill up the space between the ads, and because that's what people come for. And what organization was a genius at this? The best I've ever seen was the NFL. The NFL with the Super Bowl. They made the ads as popular as the game itself. And they realized, but you could do it. You can have fun with it. Like, movies do this too, by the way. Movies do trailers. They have fun with it. Like, but it's still an ad. They're still advertising to you. They just found a way to do it entertaining. But if I'll just say this. Did you ever watch the movie Private Parts with Howard Stern?
No.
Okay, there's this really great scene when his manager has told him, no, you have to say the news on the top of the hour. You have to say it every 15 minutes. You have to say it. And Howard's like, I don't want to do it. I want to do it. So the next scene, they show Howard talking about how his grandmother died or some sad story. Like, oh, my grandmother, she died. She was in bed with cancer. And her last word, oh, hold on. The top of the hour, the time will be 10:05. You know, and he found ways around it because you're gonna have that intrusiveness. And but if you're smart, you'll figure it out. You'll figure out how to make ads fun. But if they become intrusive, then people will flock away. They will go away. It will happen.
Yeah, so we'll see what Audible can, kind of do. But I think if, so far their limited trial is going to work, and obviously everyone worries, just like Netflix, that, if you start with an ad-supported tier, you give them a foot in the door, and then, of course, they're going to push it further and further. But until they do push further and further, let history not guide your action, and, hey, let's see what happens. So, speaking of guiding our actions by history, Tetris, what a great game that was. What kind of movie is this? And I'll be honest, Apple TV, they have had a few shows that have won awards, accolades. They've been critically received well. After the Weird Al story, or after the story of Weird Al and that biography. Speaking of advertising, it feels like they're making movies just to catch headlines.
To be fair, the Weird Al thing was Roku, though.
That's true. But still, point still stands. I feel like some of these streaming services, now I'll include Roku, including Apple TV, they're making movies just to catch headlines. And how good can Tetris as a movie be?
Well, it could be great. I used to joke about if you make a movie about Tetris, like full disclosure on Popzara, I've interviewed many, many people who've written books on Tetris. I think the story is fantastic. Like the story behind Tetris is one of the great stories of the 20th century. No joke. There are people, including myself, who feel that Tetris was pivotal in helping end the Cold War. I mean that, though. I'm not exaggerating.
It was heavily Russian for some reason. Absolutely.
Well, it is a Russian product. But you have Alexei Pujinov, the developer, in a dank basement. You have this product that, you have to remember in the 1980s, the propaganda during the Cold War was that the Russians were terrible. They hated Americans. Americans hated Russians. We couldn't, the Iron Curtain meant we couldn't communicate with each other. There was boycotts.
Thank goodness all that went away.
Well, again, but Tetris was the impetus for it. Now, exactly. You wonder how it could be good. But Tetris was this game that basically immediately, it was unapologetically Russian. It was on your Game Boy, it was on your PC, whatever. The fact that it was just probably the greatest video game ever created didn't hurt, right? But it was unapologetically Russian. You had the old style Soviet built, the onion buildings, you had the music, you had everything. And it was addictive. And it humanized Russians in a way that I think nothing else could have. Right. And I think, the economic collapse was coming, but Nintendo, more than anybody else, was smart enough to realize the potential. And the idea was, and I can't get into the whole story here, but the idea that they could go and secure the rights to it behind the Iron Kremlin. The idea is that, and you look at the trailer for Tetris and it's full of explosions and it's full of car chases and everything.
Right.
It's funny. I don't want to segue into something else, but I have to. One of the stories I put on the list is that I interviewed these directors of this movie about pinball last week. And we talked about the Tetris movie very briefly. And it's like, how do you make a movie about pinball? How do you make a movie about Tetris? Well, you don't. You make a movie about the people who made it. And that's how you do it. You make a movie about the people who did it because there are human beings that make these things. Like, I guarantee you, the story of pinball or a story of pinball or the story of Tetris is a lot more interesting than the development team who mucked up The Last of Us. because at the end of the day, we can have a movie about Leonardo da Vinci. We can have a movie about Michelangelo, all the turtles, right? We can have a movie. We can have a movie about Rembrandt. We can have a movie about Van Gogh. By the way, happy birthday, Van Gogh. We can have a movie about these artists, and we can say, well, what was the impetus for Starry, Starry Night? Like, we're gonna have a movie about Starry, Starry Night. No, you're gonna have a movie about Van Gogh cutting his ear off. You're gonna find the humanity in there. And the story of Tetris is awesome. It is an amazing story. I don't know if the movie captures it. I haven't seen it yet. The trailer makes me nervous a little bit. Whereas, in the pinball movie, I recommend everybody watch it, is a movie about a man and how pinball affected his life.
Yeah.
And in full disclosure, the title's a little bit of hyperbole, but
let's just say that the gentleman playing the lead role, he had probably two options: pinball or professional bowling. So I'm glad it worked out the way it did.
Are we talking about the pinball movie?
Yeah.
And the mustache?
Yes.
It's a very sweet movie about how pinball affected this man and how he affected pinball. And it's one of my favorite movies of 2023. I'm not joking. It's very sweet. Nice. It's very kind. It's very lovely. I hope Tetris is good. But I know with Tetris, they have Taron Egerton playing. Oh God, who does he play in the movie? Let me say. Oh, he plays Hank Rogers. That's right. But no, I'm going to watch it. I have Apple TV. I have a copy of it. We're going to review it, of course. But please read about Tetris, though, if your audience is listening. It's a fantastic story. It goes in strange places. Like once Americans got into it, there's one of the developers, did horrible things to his family.
Right.
But at the end of the day, a video game, a board game, a pinball game, whatever, they're made by people. Yep. For now, anyway. AI will take over. But,
that's an exciting future. But yeah, no, Tetris and pinball, I think both of them are, like you said, you can make a story out of anything, and some of the best stories out there are actually about seemingly nothing. But, everyone has an engaging story, and movies more so than most, hey, just tell it well, have good cinematography, do it well, and it'll be entertaining.
I will say this, though. I think if I had my way, though, I would probably wanted to make a movie about actually the creator himself, Alexei Pechenov, because I think, can you imagine being a poor kid in Russia at the time under that pressure, and you create something that was going to change the world, and you get no credit for it, because of the way Russia was. Like you literally are doing something with no perception that it's going to affect so many people. And I will say this, and this is not hyperbole talking. This is being honest as someone who's covered this crap for 30 years. I think Tetris is the best video game ever made. And I think it is an example of something that can only be done in this format. Like when people talk about Last of Us, they say, oh, it's so emotional. It is, but that's a movie you're watching. You're watching a cinema that can be done in movies. Tetris is a game about blocks based on tetrominoes, and you literally can only experience what it's doing in the video game format. Yep. And I think the fact that it stood the test of time and it's still going strong and it's still being made and it's still selling really well is a testament to that. And I think, I think there's a movie there, but I don't know if this is the movie or not. I have to watch it.
But no, but Apple does seem to have put some amount of resources into it. It looks really good. I can't speak to anything of the actual quality of it, but looks wise, it actually looks good. So Nathan, why don't you go ahead and maybe talk about some of the things that you've had your people working on over at popzara.com. Oh, yeah. What can they find there?
Well, I just mentioned the podcast about pinball, which I'm proud of. But no, we have a lot of other stuff going, games and stuff. In case you're wondering, I think our review for Resident Evil 4 just went up. Everyone was asking about that. It finally went up. We have multiple reviews on Cocaine Bear, contradictory reviews on Cocaine Bear. More stuff coming. A lot of good movies coming out. Can't review them all. It makes me sad, but there's a lot of good stuff coming out. I know most of the staff is going to see Mario next week, of course, in different levels. Pretty excited about that. I hope it's good. Don't know. Hope it is. From the previews, and like honestly, the voice actors aside, they're all professionals. They're doing their job well, and it looks like fun. I think if you go in there thinking it's going to be revolutionary, it's like, but it's going to be a heck of a fun movie. So I am also looking forward to the new Mario movie. We shall see. Yeah.
Yep. Yep, we shall see. So, ladies and gentlemen, popzara.com, computeramerica.com, we'll have everything up there that we talked about today and more. So, Nathan, thank you for joining us. And everyone, until next time, have a great weekend. Do something fun. And, ladies and gentlemen, the most useless time, April Fool's Day. Don't believe anything you hear this weekend. Everyone, have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.